There we go. Hi, hello everybody. Welcome to the podcast today. Today we're speaking about Freeports and special economic zones. We have Collette Walker and Alex Thorburn coming on today, and they're from the Freeports and Special Economic Zones Community Group. Is that correct?
It's very correct, Jess. I've been on the Freeports campaign now for just over a year, since last June, and it's been non-stop ever since.
I bet. Okay, so Alex and Collette, I'll ask you first, Collette, if that's okay, and then maybe I'll ask Alex afterwards. Might be a way to do it. We can see how we go along. So firstly, can you tell me what is a free port? What is a special economic zone? Are there any differences between the two? And one of the questions as well I got asked by one of our viewers is, what is a green free port? Is that okay? Can you guys?
Yeah, that's fine.
Answer that for us.
Well, free ports and special economic zones are basically near enough the same thing regarding business relief and incentives that we all hear about. Basically, they are near enough tax havens through the back door. We have two free ports here in Scotland, Cromarty Firth and the Firth of Forth. But what I would say before we get into the ins and outs of actual free ports itself is we have to understand that the free ports that we have here in Scotland are completely different to the ones that are in Europe, in the EU. In the EU, they are publicly owned and they're regulated through the EU. The ones that we have now here in Scotland are deregulated and they're private. They're publicly funded through our tax, through our Barnett consequentials, and the land is leased out for up to 25 years, but that could be extended if so be. The green free port, it's basically, as far as I'm concerned and as far as the campaign team's concerned, it is green gaslighting as far as we are concerned. Scotland, can be doing the renewable transitioning, the carbon net zero, etc. All these things that you hear about in the green environmental issues that people talk about, that could all be getting done without free ports. We didn't need to have this privatisation, global privatisation, corporate takeover to actually continue doing the work that we are doing for our net zero targets or any renewable transitioning. So I will maybe pass over to Alex to let him come in on anything. But again, the free ports and the economic zones are not really anything like the EU, and it's the public purse that's actually covering the cost, and we're not going to see any return in it.
Okay, can I just clarify then? So, like you say, that the public purse is like paying for it, but the profits will be taken out and given out elsewhere.
You hear this word investment and about the job opportunities. So basically, the economic zones have went from each free port is supposed to be £25 million each investment, and that's increased. The special economic zones that we have, we've got 18 of them in Scotland. They're supposed to be £80 million public money, but it's actually increased to £160 million. We're talking about over £1.5 billion to cover what we have here in Scotland out of the public purse. And as I said, that is going to have an impact on our Barnett consequentials because it's coming out of the revenue that we get back, the pocket money we get back it was so much, from Westminster. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realise it was actually that much, Collette. 160 million is an interesting figure because that's how much a new hospital is meant to cost for the Belford here, that they've been promising for 30 years and it's nowhere closer. No. Right, so Alex, if we can bring you in there, is there anything you'd like to add to that as to what are free ports and special economic zones?
Yes, well, the I concur, of course, for what Collette has already said. Now, the use of the term green food ports makes me smile, but I shouldn't really be smiling about it. Let's take the green. Well, they're certainly not green. The green has just been tagged on the end to make it appear a little bit more palatable to the public. Uh, a port, well, that infers an area around a harbour. Well, these green free ports have a 45-mile circumference, which take the fourth free port, starts west of Falkirk and takes in Leith. And 70% of the Edinburgh and the airport. They're massive areas, and the deregulation that Collette has already mentioned that is going to go on is enormous, and the local authorities are going to suffer greatly for it. So it's not green, it's not a port, and they're definitely not free.
That is frightening, Alex. So can I just clarify then? So, wow, that whole big area could literally now, they can literally go ahead with this.
They're
I
both
mean,
live. Both
they're
of them
both
are live.
live, yeah.
They're already
Yeah,
live.
yeah.
Property first got signed off just before summer recess. The 5th of 4th is now live as well. And already Edinburgh Council, I've actually put it up on our official social media pages. There was an article in one of the Edinburgh newspapers. The Edinburgh Council has already seen, within a couple of months of the fourth Freeport being live, that it's actually not working already within a couple of months. The investment that they have put in of the public money, or taxpayers' money, has now increased by over 340%. The job opportunities that have been promised before they get this contract, people put in, companies put in how many jobs that they propose that they will be supplying, has actually decreased already, as I say, just within a couple of months of over there. I think it's actually over 40% now. It's going down and down. And obviously, with the business tax relief, Jeremy Hunt changed it from 5 years to 10 years. Now, that has a major impact on the local council authority budget, because they would be getting subsidies from that. So again, not only are the companies coming in and they're not paying business tax, they're not paying national insurance contributions. The local authority are going to be depleted of really essential money. And we all know every single council within Scotland is actually really struggling at the present moment. And again, with the Freeports that are happening in England and the SEZs that are happening in England, there's so much privatisation now that the more privatisation there is in England, the more then Scotland's going to be affected by the public service money that we get back in our Barnett consequentials. So there's major impacts in Scotland, no matter where you turn with this, whether it's Westminster government money coming back in our Barnett consequentials, or our local authority through the business tax subsidies.
That's frightening, isn't it? I tell you what, Alex, can I? This is interesting because where are we? This is Richard Murphy. I read the other day. This sums it up pretty well, I suppose. I'll quote him. He says, "Their very existence, free ports and special economic zones, their very existence is a threat to the democratic control of this country by the government, and for that reason they are deeply pernicious and are as dangerous as tax havens have ever been to the effective control of democracy over the well-being of the vast majority of the people all over the world." So I suppose at these zones, I mean, like I mentioned before, we started with trade deals and stuff. Are these free ports, these special economic zones? I mean, it seems pretty obvious that they are a mechanism to completely bypass the struggles for labor rights and human rights to turn these places into maximum extraction for profits. So they're circumventing the laws that have been made up. Do you agree with this?
Well, of course, it's this has all been a secret, but we'll come to that. Yeah, the democracy angle. It's often been called Freeports have often been called a state within a state, basically because they rule themselves. They're deregulated. They can make their own rules. They make their own workers' conditions. And if you remember, the Guardian said about a year or two ago, democracy is the problem that capital is always striving to solve. To maintain its rates of profit, it seeks to drive down the taxes it must pay, and then all the regulations that defend the living workers and consumers, and that's exactly what free ports do. The amount that will be coming from local authorities, you can hear it on any news program. Okay, it's been overtaken by world events, but local authorities in England are going bankrupt. They can't provide the services, and who steps in to save the day?
Of course, private sector.
Yeah, private companies, of course they do. And as Collette has already said, with the consequentials that are involved, that's going to really damage local authorities in Scotland. And that's on top of the business rates and the national insurance contributions that supposed to go to government.
Yeah.
But the business rates are really lack of business rates are really going to damage local authorities. I don't think the councils have thought this through at all. They have pretty well rubber stamped it after they heard, oh, there's going to be jobs, there's going to be money, investment, the key words, the usual ones. But the reality is that any jobs that do come have been proved in other Freeport areas that they're very low key jobs, and the top jobs are filled by incomers.
Is there? I think it was Richard Murphy as well. I was reading, and he did mention that even when you have these special economic zones, and then you have areas, he said it's a net zero game, I believe he said, because you'll have other areas that won't do as well, and if the projections are out with a private investment and stuff, you'll have areas that will do well, and some which won't. So of course that's going to create that divide again and force the issue and make and extend the special economic zones and stuff. Do you think there's a danger of this? Do you think that may be an agenda there?
Oh, there is no doubt. There's been a long-term agenda, Eddie. They started off with, well, they can go back to when Sunak was studying in Stanford University under Paul Romer. What did he study? Effectively, it was recolonization, how much we could get out of any given area in the way of profit maximization for the corporations. Then we took on charter cities, moved on to special economic zones, and now we've got free ports. And as Collette has already said, there are free ports in the EU, but they're very different from here. And it was only with the coming of Brexit, and even Sunak admitted that they were able to get away with bringing in these deregulated areas as free ports.
I mean, that's interesting what you say, that it seems to be failing. Can you just explain a little bit more, Collette, about these tax incentives and stuff, and how they're designed to attract foreign investment?
Yeah, first of all, we've got to remember that this, as Alex said, if people think that this has just happened overnight, this has been long-term planning. If you remember, leading up to the talks about Brexit leading up to 2016, so you are talking 8 years ago plus, that they didn't want a soft Brexit. If you think about the timelines regarding when Theresa May came in and she was Prime Minister, and the options that she was looking at to get passed through, it was more a soft Brexit, a Canadian style. That just wasn't going to be allowed to happen, because as we know at that time, the EU were looking into really been quite strict and looking at the different laws to stop all the loopholes for tax avoidance and tax evasion. So when she was looking at a soft Brexit, that really couldn't apply. They needed a hard Brexit. They needed fully out so that they could then start on this deregulation process. So
and not be restricted by the EU. Yeah,
exactly. So they didn't want any interference in the single market, etc., etc. So what did they need to do? As Alex said about Rishi Sunak, he was, you know, backbencher. Nobody really knew anything about him, but he'd already set up his own hedge fund when he was in his early 20s, which was registered in the Cayman Islands. So he, you know, he's already proven that he is for corporate, you know, takeover and profit before people.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they needed somebody to get this hard Brexit. So they bring in somebody with the charisma. And who did they bring in? But bring in Boris Johnson. Now, if you remember, Boris Johnson then, yes, seemingly got Brexit done as they like to say. But the minute he got Brexit done, he was person non gratis. He wasn't required anymore. So he was then outed. And through the ranks, all of a sudden, this Rishi Sunak was Chancellor. And now he became Prime Minister. Because you could have all the theory that you want with these things. You need somebody that's going to do the practicalities as well. And who better than somebody, as Alex said, who'd been taught by the best person to do with corporate takeover.
You could almost be forgiven for thinking that's the man they always wanted in.
Oh yes, but I think they knew that somebody like him wouldn't get actually Brexit done in the manner that they wanted it to get done. And if you remember through even the general election, and a lot of people might not have picked this up, but even through the general election, when you possibly watched any of the debates, there was more and more of the same language and language such as deregulation. They never extended or enhanced on what deregulation meant. They kind of just brought this in a sentence, and then it was nobody. But what's this deregulation you're talking about?
It means more jobs and prosperity for the country.
Yeah, exactly. But again, it's then later on when people then realise what's actually happening, they say, "Oh, but we told you about the deregulation. We spoke about it in the general election." But nobody has ever voted for a party in their manifesto for free ports or special economic zones in, well, I'm talking about Scotland here.
Yeah.
Not in their manifestos. We did not sign up to this. We did not vote for this. We haven't even been told about this. So to actually have these imposed on us is even more of a scandal. And for the Scottish government to actually be working with the UK government but not kicking up a stink. So when you're talking about and as Alex said, that they're certainly not free. So as I said, they've got now, instead of 5 years business tax relief, they've got 10 years business tax relief. They don't pay national insurance contributions. They certainly don't allow union reps to come in for workers' rights. You're looking at possibly not abiding by the law of the land, as Alex said. They're a state within a state, so they're self-governing. So they don't have to then abide by this the living wage or a minimum wage. They can set their own, and again, the employers don't have a say. And if you look at the likes of what happened with the P&O ferry scandal, you know, it's like fire and rehire. So that's a big possibility as well, that, you know, if you don't like it, well, off you go, because we'll rehire. And again, you know, who then, if you get made redundant by this particular company, then how then that could affect you being able to apply for any social security benefits, because you've not paid any national insurance contributions. I don't know how well they're going to log their their employment records or anything. So all this is very, very uncertain. But I'm actually really glad now, through the work that the Freeports team have been doing and a lot of engagement, that there's quite a few now unions that are actually starting to now ask questions and speak out, like Unison and the STUC. So they and RMT, they are now actually starting to speak out about employment rights and environmental rights that we are flagging up. But it's quite a worry when you think that the workers are basically going to be exploited. But again, it's not even the job creation that they're promising. Is replacing them from one building to possibly just another building within a Freeport or an SEZ area. It's not creating new jobs as they're proposing. It's actually just moving a lot of employers around.
Yeah. It really it's probably a bad analogy, but it reminds me of The Simpsons, where and the next town they want to get the roller coaster ride, and everyone's just roller coaster, and there's absolutely no reason for it. It's just such an obvious scam.
Yeah.
But so can I ask you, I don't want to be bashing the SNP or our Scottish government again, but I mean, say for instance, and I mean, Kate Forbes we can get into this, but she's well up for the Freeports and stuff. You can see that she's open about that. But at the same time, we see the SNP supposedly described as a party that cares about working class people and all the protections and the rights we've won over the years, and yet here they are, fully involved and fully supporting these Freeports. Would you say that's hypocrisy there? Are they completely lying to us? Or can they?
Well, it is hypocrisy, Eddie, but it's been a very unfortunate result of SNP leadership over the past few years. They've moved from the left of centre, socially motivated party, to a party that now is involved with tax avoidance scams. Is they really call it what they are, and that's exactly the thing. The point that I was also going to make, that Collette just made. It's shuffling people around. It's not creating new jobs. The businesses that just outside those Freeport areas will look to move inside those Freeport areas, specifically to take advantage of the tax situation and the lack of national insurance contributions, etc. And this is not just here; it's happening all over the Freeports. It happens everywhere in the world.
So, I mean, is it just to clarify then, Alex? Is it that basically your working man, for want of a better expression, is not going to get any benefits from this? It's just the usual suspects.
Well, the jobs that will be created, and this has been recorded time after time throughout the world, is that they create low-paid jobs, very menial jobs, and the top salaries go to those that are brought in to actually oversee the work within the Freeports. So there's no real positive benefit to local working people.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I've got a quote, and this is from, I'd like to read you. This is a quote. It's from someone who was just writing in the Edinburgh Gazette. I don't know this person, Leah Gunn Barrett. This is from 14th of May 2024. I don't really know about this, but just let me read this quick quote. It's a short letter she wrote. It says, between 1998 and 2021, Scotland lost £277 billion to foreign companies who repatriated their profits and shareholder dividends to England and overseas. These people don't need encouragement to buy more of Scotland. It's proven so lucrative that they are baying for more, and Swinney's administration will satisfy their insatiable appetite by continuing the mass sell-off of Scotland's assets. Is this roughly correct? I mean, that's a huge figure. I mean, I don't know if these figures are correct, but I'd imagine it's probably roughly right, isn't it?
I don't know about the
Well,
figures, but
yeah, I don't know about the figures.
when you think about really the bypassing of any revenue, you know, I have said before that leading up to the referendum in 2014, they spoke about our gas and our oil supply, and it was it was going to run out and we couldn't rely on that revenue. And now all of a sudden they're giving out 100 new licenses, just over the past few months. We don't see any of that real revenue. It goes down to Westminster. If you then think about the amount of bypassing through a Freeport of revenue that's now not going to be calculated within any of our figures, it's actually going to make our economy in Scotland, through not just our gas and oil, but now for our renewables, etc., is going to be even lower. And basically it's really just to say, oh, look at that, you're again too small, too poor, because
exactly.
You're not making any money from your natural resources that you speak about, but they're being bypassed. And again, Michael Gove, down when you talk about the English Freeports, it's well known that he's now then said to the companies with HMRC that basically the companies can do their own books.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they're going to be doing their own books, that should worry people, that these corporate companies are then going to be bypassing quite a lot and using quite a lot of the loopholes that they can use.
Yeah, which will draw even more people, for tax evasion and all the rest of it.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and again, if because of the way it works with Scotland, with our any of our reserve, the reserve matters, whether it's fishery, gas and oil, renewables, etc., we get pocket money back, and if that then is going to be calculated in an even worse state because of the bypassing of all these import
taxes
and export
national
taxes.
Insurance.
Yeah, exactly. So we're basically
forcing the nationalised system to fail, aren't we?
And that's all intentional.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way, Eddie, and as I've said for the past over a year since I've been working with the campaign team, if this was the big, huge, big pot of gold at the end of this lovely economic rainbow for Scotland and the people of Scotland and our standard of living, why does nobody know about it?
Yeah, good question.
Why are we the ones in this the Salvo Freeports team? Why is it us that is travelling around Scotland trying to educate the public and talking about this? Why are no matter what party it is, let's not make this party political. Is our Scottish government a Scottish government that is wanting seemingly Scottish independence? This is an open goal for them to actually say, look at what Westminster are doing to us.
That
would galvanise the people of Scotland, because they are getting angry. Once they know about it, they are getting angry about it. But for a Scottish government to not be talking openly about really what's happening, but actually going along with it, that tells you a lot. But nobody knows about it. It's not in the mainstream media.
Of course not.
No. And it's only because the likes of ourselves that maybe are doing stuff that a couple of journalists have picked up on it and maybe done a few, but it's really not even in the media, as in newspapers, certainly not mainstream TV.
Yeah. Alex, I'll ask Alex about this. And Collette, you shared a video, I think it was by Professor Quinn Slabedian the other day.
Yeah.
It was, that was really, really good. What I was going to ask Alex is, oh God, I forgot what I was going to ask now. I'll tell you what, so Collette, can you just quickly you said earlier that the Firth of Forth and stuff, the projections there are not working out. They're not getting the investments that they were hoping for. What do you know? Can you explain a little bit more? Like, why is that failing, or is this just a hiccup? Or
Well, as
No,
far as we
this
know,
was Collette. This was Collette. Collette brought that up, but it's recent figures that have just come out. But Collette can explain where they came from.
well, it was an article that was brought out, and it was Edinburgh Council that are now realising that the Forth Freeports isn't really, even after just a couple of months of being live, isn't actually working out to their advantage and what they were proposing. As I say, they've already now had to increase their taxpayer, the money that the council were contributing from the taxpayer to these private companies by over 340%. And the job opportunities that were proposed and promised have now decreased by at least 40%, and that's only within a couple of months. But we're finding that there isn't the companies coming in and actually utilising the area anyway. So there's this money that has been invested in, but they're not actually taking the areas up anyway. But again, we're not going to see any profit from them anyway. But it's not working the way that it's been promised, the way it's down in a contract. But again, even when you're talking about the real living wage, etc., you know, they say that, oh yes, but in Scotland ours is different from England. Well, no, we're not. They can't be. Freeports are not, especially deregulated. They can't be in competition with each other. And the UK government have actually blocked a lot of things, proposals that the Scottish government actually proposed. They blocked them, as they will. You know, I mean, they've got the Section 35 order, but they can also use the Internal Market Bill to just basically stop everything in its tracks if Scotland tried to do something different that was actually going to be more of an incentive. So they're not going to allow that. They're not going to allow the Scottish Freeports to be actually any better if the Freeports can get better in that sense. They're not going to allow that. But for the Scottish government to say that the companies, and this is really crucial, they say that the companies may sign up to the living wage agenda, etc., or the fair work agenda. It's the word may. Yes, they can sign the contract and say, yeah, that's fine, we'll sign up for that. But then they don't do it. The Scottish government,
or they could just change it, couldn't they, if they wanted? Yeah,
they can change it because they're self-governing. But the Scottish government do not have any powers on employment law. That's a reserved matter to Westminster.
Yeah.
So they don't have the jurisdiction, they don't have the authority to do anything about these companies that go against any contract that they have signed, because they actually have put the word may. That's really important. It's actually what's written as well in the terminology, in the language that's getting used in the contracts, that's really important. And a couple of the unions have actually picked up on the wording that's getting used, and that's one of the biggest ones for unions to do with employment right, is this word may sign up. Yeah.
Of course. Alex, sorry, my question's here. I was going to ask you, would you be able to maybe explain a bit more? I mean, simplistically, I understand this kind of process. I mean, say if you want to say like a private company will come into an area and it'll extract the resources, pay out minimum wage or whatever, the minimum it has to do, tax incentives and all the rest of it, and then take the profits out of the area, repatriate it in England or America or whatever. I mean, this is the general sort of MO. Would you be able, is that correct in saying this? I mean, if you're living in an area and you say, oh yeah, Freeport's a good idea, or a special economic zone is a good idea, is it a fact then that, okay, I'm happy for me to have my wages lowered and for profits to be taken out of the area and not put back into the area? Is that basically it in a nutshell?
Yes, that's it. That's it exactly. The secrecy that's gone on behind this, as Collette has alluded to earlier, has been absolutely enormous. It was only discovered by the Freeports team a couple of years ago when they saw the letter from when he got Kate Forbes to Michael Gove.
Mhm.
I mean, some of the language in it, this have very much welcomed the resumption of joint working between the Scottish UK governments on a partnership basis. So not only are they selling their futures down the river, they're actually not defending them as a government should do for its people.
Mhm.
The secrecy that's going on. Come back to what we just mentioned about the downplaying of any expectations that gets quietly slipped in, and not just a few million, but massively, and that's within 2 months. Now, can you just imagine the secrecy that's going to go on around any negative figures or any negative developments in these Freeport areas?
Mhm.
Because the Scottish government won't want it, local authorities won't want it. So who's going to defend the people against these corporations?
Yeah, that is that is the big question. It really is, isn't it? Okay, I've got that thing with Michael Gove thing. Here he is. I'll just read out Michael Gove's quote. What probably very close to when you're talking about here. He said, "This is him talking about Freeports." He said, "This is a truly exciting moment for Scotland. Green Freeports help inject billions into the local economy while levelling up and creating jobs for local people and opportunities for people all over the UK to flourish." And then, of course, as you said, Kate Forbes got back and basically said, "Yeah, hey, it's great to be working together again. Let's do this thing together." It's so worrying, isn't it? I mean, honestly, after what we're talking about here, if we can basically say that here's an area and we're going to let private corporations and come in and strip away whatever profits there are instead of putting it back into the community. My God, people have got such a short memory. We had the thing here with Gupta and the aluminium plant, and it just goes on and on. I mean, we had how much disappeared in the, was it 38 billion pounds in the, where does this money go? Where people have such a short memory, don't they?
They
Well, there's
do, but
another very scary thing that not yet been mentioned, and that's compulsory purchase. These corporations and their companies, well, compulsory purchase is not possible for private companies in Scotland. That all sounds good, doesn't it?
Hmm.
However, if they partner with an acquiring authority, then they can purchase pretty much what they want. Purchase land, buildings, homes, infrastructure,
Well,
you name it, they can purchase it as long as they are partnering with an acquiring authority. Now, an acquiring authority can be a Scottish Government department, it can be the local authority, it can be Transport Rail, it can be any one of a number of public authorities in Scotland. And they're already committed to the Freeports programme.
hmm.
So the planning departments and local authorities are pretty well much going to rubber stamp any compulsory purchase orders. You can appeal against it if you got enough money to do so, because
Hmm.
it's horrendously expensive
Yeah,
to challenge these corporations, and they basically win by process
yeah,
because
they
you
tie
just
you
can't
up in
afford to go
court for
through it.
years, and yeah. And another thing, of course, is a consequence of that is once, like you said, once that land gets bought and goes into private hands, it becomes so extortionate the public purse can never afford to buy it back.
Well, that's that's right. That's if you get the opportunity to buy it back,
Yeah, if you get
and
the
we don't know.
opportunity.
Although these contracts go on for 25 years,
Mm.
uh, they're pretty well hidden. The terms. What I would like to know is, once they've extracted all profitability, do they just abandon them,
Yeah, I imagine,
just
yeah, they probably
disappear
will.
until
There'll be a clause in it
and
to
just
say leave it as
leave
you
us
left
with
it,
the
and then they'll
aftermath?
sell it
Yes.
on for a pound. That's kind of what they do sometimes.
well, this is the thing. We don't actually know how much they're actually leasing our land for either. I mean, this is again it's not transparent at all. And as far as we know, that as Alex said, after 25 years, possibly they could extend, or they could then just up ship and move out. And as far as we know, and as far as we've researched, then it's actually then going to be up to the local council to do the clear up. So
Yes,
it's not as if when you rent a flat or a house and you come to the end of your lease and you have to put the house back to exactly the way it was. So if you've painted or painted a different colour, you need to put it back to the original colours or put up the original blinds or whatever. This isn't the case. The companies will just get up, take their profits and go, and then it will be then up to the local councils to do the clear up at the taxpayers' expense. But also we don't actually know about what they've actually done, what they've put in and on our land or our waters.
Yes,
because
exactly.
Again, there's nobody there to oversee
regulate
what's actually happening environmentally either. So they could be doing, they talk about this net zero, and I've shared quite a few different videos leading up to our SEZ Glasgow public meeting at the end of this month. But even in the likes of India and South Africa, there's a pattern here, because they talk about green energy and all this stuff to do with the environment. But then when they actually start to utilise the area within that zone, it's not very environmentally friendly. So we don't act, and again, because it is self-governing, so we don't actually know what they could be putting in our land and into our waters. And if you look at what's happening in Teesside now, we're about 4 or 5 years behind what's happening in Teesside, and that is an utter scandal on a really high scale. What's happening there, especially environmentally. The dredging that they done and the environmental cost to the marine life is extensive. You had crabs all over a beach with nerve damage because of the pollution that actually came into the water after they done dredging. Now, we've got, we've got submarines, etc., lying, Rosyth, etc. If they start doing any dredging, we don't know what is actually going to happen with our waters. And again, up at the Cromarty Firth, they've got big green fences round the area that nobody can see into what's happening and what's going on. So it's completely not transparent in any matter of means.
It's completely crazy, because you have corporations, as you do, like spilling poisons into the environment when they're supposed to be regulated. So we're talking about places where there's no regulation at all. You'd be pretty stupid to expect them to not do this stuff. Of course they're going to, because that's externalizing the cost, isn't it? So that's exactly what they will do. There's no doubt about it. So of course there's the angle of labor, there's the angle of human rights, and now quite rightly you're bringing up, the issue of the environment. I mean, is there, apart from profits? Sorry, Alex, just apart from profits going to the usual suspects, I mean, this really does sound like a very, very bad idea. I remember that Professor Quinn Slobodian said one way to look at special economic zones is, or you can use them as a lens to observe better how global capital is working. I think he said since the 70s, they've literally gone from hundreds to tens of thousands around the globe. So this really is a backdoor global privatization, isn't it? I mean, it really is a big, big live initiative.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fencing at Ardeshir that Colette's just mentioned has been replicated in a smaller scale at places like Burnt Island, places that used to be open to the public, and common good land is. The local authorities think that they own the common good land when they don't. If they only manage it for the people, but they tend to forget that. The common good land, you can't sell off common good land that is inalienable, but they can lease it long term. So there's what's happened at Burnt Island is they've fenced off the harbour area. Part of the harbour area that people used to use for recreation, walking dogs or what have you. Now they can't get access to that. And this is all been in preparation for the Freeport coming along.
Jeez, yeah. And I mean, you guys know about the legal challenges there. I mean, once again, it's so that I mean, are they acting unlawfully or illegally? And does it need a legal challenge to say prevent, like you said, them making Burnt Island inaccessible or leasing it out when it should be we should have the right to roam on that land, shouldn't we?
Yeah, well, there was a campaign team, and I think they were reasonably successful in bringing a legal case on that.
Oh,
But
good.
I'm not entirely sure of the full outcome unless Colette's heard more about that.
No, I actually haven't. It was something that we were possibly trying to get in contact with them about. But at the time, there was also the Flamingo Land campaign
Oh, yeah.
that was going on. And because that was part of Flamingo Land being in an area within the Glasgow SEZ, we contacted the Flamingo campaign team to save Loch Lomond, to actually ask them what they knew about SEZs, because that also had an impact on the local community with if Flamingo Land came in and then they were able to use the special economic zone incentives for the business. Not only did it have the environmental issues that the Save Loch Lomond team spoke about, yes, they did talk about the local community being affected, the local businesses, the small businesses. But if then Flamingo Land were going to come in and use the incentives of being in a special economic zone, so myself and another colleague of ours that's on the team, John, we went along to one of their public meetings, and John was one of the speakers, and we actually tried to tell them roughly, what an SEZ was and how that then could even increase the demise of the local community and their economy, because again, Flamingo Land would be again a state within a state within a state themselves, because everything was going to be there. You wouldn't actually have to leave Flamingo Land. Not only that, then the actual company itself would then have the business tax relief, etc., and the national insurance. So they were going to get even extra. And at the time, we did say, it's not, I don't believe in coincidences. Flamingo Land went away for a couple of years, and I know we had COVID, and that possibly kept them away for a couple of years. But then all of a sudden they reared their head again when we had this special economic zone within that local council area. I don't believe in coincidences.
No. No, I tell you what, I think I think we can understand. I'm sure, I hope the viewers can pretty much understand roughly what's going on with Freeports and that now. So if I'm sure most of our viewers would agree that this is a threat. I mean, what is the point in having all this, not just here in the UK or Scotland, but literally nationally? What's the point in having history and all these global struggles if they can be just sideswiped, by our government and stuff? So this will lead me on to a sort of final part of the discussion here. What can we do to stop this progressing? What can we do or how can we help stop this rising tide of privatization that's rife through our economy and our system?
Well,
I'll let you go,
Salvo,
Alex.
as part of that, I mean, it's not only a small part of it, but we know that Salvo solicitors sent letters to the companies involved in the fourth Freeport, basically saying that this has been brought in under the auspices of the English Crown, not the Scottish Crown. The English Crown does not own the areas that you are going to be working within. That belongs to the Scottish Crown, and the Scottish Crown is the community realm, i.e. the people of Scotland, not some monarch with a crown on his head. So that's only a small part of it, but the longer term future for Scotland looks pretty bleak at the moment, unless we can actually get behind some sort of campaign to either slow down or preferably to prevent these free ports and special economic zones that are going to rip the heart out of our country.
Yeah, and this is what concerns me. I mean, like you said, you're talking about 25 years leasing. It's quite interesting that they never do anything for 25 years, but they do this for 25 years, and I'm assuming that, you know, even if we did get independence, it's going to be a difficult task to extricate ourselves from these leases, isn't it? Because we're going to be sort of out of contract or acting illegally. So, I mean, so potentially these zones and stuff, they could really hold Scotland back, even if we were independent for such a long time. Would that be correct?
The letter states that they have been warned that this basically is through Scots law illegal in the first place. Even this legal fiction of a union that we're supposed to be in, it doesn't give them any territorial sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually don't have the rights to our land anyway.
So we just have to exercise that sovereignty.
Yeah, because you know that wasn't even part of the legal fiction of the union that we're supposed to be seemingly in, which again, because of Salvo, we know we're not. But they didn't have any rights to our land or our sea. But because we have now became an English Crown dependency, they have basically just railroaded all that, totally dismissed it, and again the colonisation mindset, because of the way it's been done, it's like, well, this is just the way it's always been. But they don't have the rights, but they have been warned that, you know, they are doing this against Scots law. There was a case in Honduras where the government there were trying to get rid of a lot of their free ports, and the companies were basically going to sue the government for billions of pounds. But there has been a success there with the government. So that looks quite favourable, but we actually have warned them in advance. So that should be in our favour as well. But what I would say is, this is the time that people really need to get themselves educated on actually what's happening in Scotland, and what's happening to our land and to our resources and to our economy, because it's everybody in Scotland that's going to be affected. You know, it's been shown that we've got 100% renewables, and I've been putting this up on social media this week. 100% renewables, and we're not seeing any profit or any benefit for that. Our bills aren't going down.
No, they're the highest, aren't they?
Exactly,
one of the highest.
The highest. But we are producing 100% renewables in Scotland, not England, Scotland. And we are not benefiting from that whatsoever. What does that tell you? So really, this is the time that people really need to start getting engaged again. Get themselves informed. As I say, we've done 8 public meetings now, you know, round Scotland, and we're now going to be doing public meetings on special economic zones. The first one is at the end of this month, the 27th of October. We are trying to go out like outside conferences, like we were outside the SNP conferences, handing out leaflets regarding what the SNP and the Scottish Government are saying about joining the EU when we become an independent, and why that's not going to happen, and why that can never happen if we've got free ports. So we were engaging with, you know, people at the SNP conference. We're going to be at Grangemouth tomorrow at the Grangemouth protest. We were at the currency conference. We had a stall there. So we're really trying to engage with people as much as we can, and we want them to come on board, find out more, and then they can then start writing and asking questions to their elected representatives, whether it's your councillor, your MSP or your MP, and ask them serious questions. But what's very interesting, Eddie, is when we've been holding the 8 public meetings, anytime we've always invited all the elected representatives. Kate Forbes has been asked twice to come to Inverness, her local constituency. She's never attended any of our meetings to come and tell us about how wonderful these green free
Yeah.
ports are. You would have thought
Mm.
that she would have wanted to come and promote them, especially in her constituency, but she didn't. But the couple of councillors that have actually attended our public meetings have actually came along to find out what they are actually all about, because they're not hearing them within their local council building. If they're not part of the administration, then they're not getting to hear what's going on. Again, yet another scandal. Why is our elected representatives not knowing what is actually happening on their doorstep that's actually going to be affecting their constituents that they're there being elected to represent?
Yeah, well, conspicuous by omission, as you say. There's Kate's had ample opportunity, like you said. She makes statements about Freeports rather than engages in discussion,
Yes.
which is it's not good enough, to be frank, is it?
No. So I think now it's the time again. It's up to people power now to actually get ourselves educated. You know, we are learning every day. It's a huge subject, but I think more people that are starting. Like we had our stall at the Hope Over Fear rally a few weeks ago, and I think probably our stall was the busiest. We never stopped for the couple of hours that we were there. There was so much engagement, and through that, you know, I've spoke at a Unison meeting. I went to speak to Unison, and then we've had a couple of councillors coming to our weekly meeting that we have, just to ask questions and find out what's going on and get themselves educated. So they're actually coming to us, Eddie, and that really shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, exactly.
Education is absolutely key, as Collette says. But when she mentioned the 100% renewable energy, Scotland's infrastructure has had massive underdevelopment for decades. And the only real development that is going on, new development, is to take our energy south to England from one economic zone in Scotland to another economic zone in England. And it's only really to benefit others that any new infrastructure is being created. You look at our practically anything. Our industry was decimated, of course, in the Thatcher years, but there's been no real massive investment. What I like to know is the trillions. I mean, I'm talking really trillions that have headed south to London from Scotland's oil and gas over the years since 1975. Where has it gone? It's certainly not visible in Scotland, and for most of England and Wales and Northern Ireland, it's not visible there either. So where has this money gone?
I think the only really sort of hope we've got, Alex, is like you mentioned earlier before we started recording, is to have an independent country with a direct democracy. At least that gives us a chance. I think the system we have now is so railed against us. I mean, what was it I said to Jason, funnily enough, the other day? You could almost call it the loneliness of the long distance activist. It's all the time you have to be wary of these things like Freeports and SCZs and stuff, TTIP and stuff, but they can afford to be relentless because they get paid to do this. They do this every day. As we're us, you know, we're out there trying to go, stop raping our land and trying to get people to listen and try to get involved. But we're becoming more and more restricted, even with freedom of speech and the right to demonstrate and march and stuff. Even all these things are being inhibited. So I think within that UK model, we are really being restricted. And probably the sooner we try to come to terms with sovereignty, as you know, that mind, you know, probably the better, I would suggest. If there's anything else you want to add about this, I think we've pretty much summed it up. Like I said, I'd really like to ask you to back on again and run us through, you know, what the ISP, what Salvo are doing regarding decolonization and down that route. Would you be welcome to come back, and would you be willing to do that? Come back on the podcast for us?
Absolutely, not a problem.
Yes.
Love to.
That would be great. I know
Yes.
that would be of interest to a lot of our
Certainly.
viewers. That's great.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I'll press stop. We can have a quick chat afterwards and stuff. Is there anything else I'm forgetting, or is there anything else you guys want to add before we finish on Freeports and SCZs for now?
No, I think we've covered most of the things. There's always other stuff, but I think that's enough of
Yeah.
it just now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can say in general they're the usual MO. They're good for a very, very few and very bad for the vast majority of us, as has been said.
Well,
Okay,
as
listen.
may have been obvious, that was my first podcast.
Was that your first podcast? Well done. It wasn't too bad, I hope, Alex. And I look forward to getting you back on again. Yeah, because like I was speaking earlier, you've got some really good memory. I wish I had as good a memory as you, and sort of a sort of rough
Oh.
idea of stuff.
Well, sovereignty and decolonization are such huge issues that are going to become more and more prevalent over the
Yeah,
coming years. And
I
certainly,
hope so. Yeah,
as I said before, the second string to Salvo's bow is direct democracy, and it is a policy of the ISP as well, of course.
yeah.
Why on earth would we want to restore self-determination, regain our independence, to import a system like they have at Westminster, for goodness sake?
Yeah. I remember even back in the day of 2014, there was always that argument. It's like you could tell that some people just wanted to be independent because they wanted a slice of the pie, and we'd be going, "No, we don't want to replicate that model at all."
Well, I've still not heard from our First Minister about the email I sent on Sunday. So that's been a full working week, and I've not even had an acknowledgement of the email either. So I'm going to be sending it again, and I'll put it up that I've resent it. It'll be very telling if he doesn't reply, and if the presiding officer doesn't take any action. And we've actually been rejected from putting up the petition as well.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, Alex was talking about, I think he said Switzerland, you have 100,000 people, signatures, and it generates a referendum. As well, 100,000 signatures here generates a discussion in Parliament where they may or may not do something.
Exactly,
pretty
exactly.
bad,
but
isn't it?
It's like the Flamingo Land, though. They had 160,000 signatures of objection.
That's a hell of a lot.
It's a lot, because it was actually double than what they got in 2019. But as Ross Greer said at the public meeting, at that time it was sitting about 134, 135,000 at the public meeting, but it did increase the last couple of weeks as well when they were really ramping it up. But as he said, even at the 135,000 mark, he said what Scottish Enterprise and what Flamingo Land, etc., were saying was that it was one signature, one objection, but 135,000 people were agreeing to that.
Yes, I've heard this before. This is why they say you have to individualize your letter and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. So,
That's
but they have rejected our petition, which I thought they would have done, and we haven't heard from the presiding officer yet, and I certainly haven't heard. So that will be very telling if they then don't get in contact with us regarding this.
Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Like I said, I'm hopefully we'll probably speak about this one day again soon, because this is a live subject. This is the future of our country.
Exactly.
So right. So I'll wrap up the recording there. Thanks everybody for listening to this. We will have we will have Collette and Alex back and to talk about decolonization, which I'm sure you'll all find is a fascinating subject. So take care. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll press stop recording. There we go. Are you sure you want to stop recording?